Okay, we are back for our kind of third section of the afternoon here. So thankful that you've been kind of hanging out with us today. Hopefully it's been beneficial. Hopefully you've been learning new things that you can take back and implement. Just to take a quick brief aside and kind of thank Concordia Technology Solutions. Just a quick brief on them. They're the church administrative division of Concordia Publishing House, and they've been developing software to help churches focus on ministry since 1984. So they've been with the church and helping the church for a long time. And I just continue to see their resources ramp up. The education they're providing, the resources have just been fantastic. So really plug in there. One quick plug for Peter Frank, again, he's coming back up. He has developed a 14-week training course that he can talk about. It's a comprehensive training course for church communications, kind of help out your digital presence and really kind of organize that a little bit better. Their blog, Technology and Your Ministry, will provide resources and ideas for your church. And I also write occasionally there, so I guess that's a little plug for the authorship over there as well. But we're so thankful for what they've been doing and the resources they're building. So I think if you go to the Lutheran Communicators group on Facebook, I believe Peter shared the link over to his new training course. So I want to make sure you get plugged into that, because that is going to be a very helpful training course for you as you try to kind of map out what a plan might look like for your church. So again, so thankful to Concordia Technology Solutions and Concordia Publishing House. Very thankful for what they're doing for the church. And with that, I'll hand it over to Peter, and he's going to talk about the anatomy of a communication plan. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Seth, and thank you for your partnership. It's been great working with you on this conference and as a blog author, and I'm excited to do more things with you in the future. So I was not originally scheduled to present twice today. I didn't want to make it seem like it was the Peter Frank show, but we had a speaker have to deal with a family issue at the last minute, so I'm happy to jump in and help talk about this subject. It like Seth says, ties in very well with what I'm doing with the Church Online Communications Comprehensive, and I'll give a little bit of details at that at the very end. But I'm going to go ahead and switch to my screen now. So pardon me just a second while we shift gears. And we'll make sure that that looks okay. Getting some feedback that my video is a little choppy, so hopefully we're good to go. All right, so we should have the title slide up and going, and I'm going to move into, so we're going to talk about the anatomy of a communication plan. And having a defined plan is an important step for church communicators. As we talk about communications, especially digital communications, there's so much that you can include in there. And so we're not going to get into the real nitty-gritty details today. That's what the 14-week course is for. But today we're going to talk about just a few things. And Katie and I should have planned it a little bit better, because we talk about some of these questions. I'll show you in a second. But what are we really doing here? Well, we're really fulfilling the Great Commission. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. That's the core part of what our mission is here. And so as we look at the 5 ingredients of a communication plan, we're going to start off with the why. And in communications, that really comes down to branding. And the why of all church communications is to apply the Great Commission in this time and in this place. And that's what the churches are doing. That's what you're doing in the ministry, is you're sharing the grace of Jesus with the people in your community. But what makes it unique for your church is that it's in this time and in this place, and that's different than all other churches. So branding is a lot more than just colors and fonts, although that's a very important part of it, and I caution you not to overlook that. But that's not the core part of branding. The core part of branding is what sets your church apart from others. What are you providing in your community by sharing the gospel that might be lacking elsewhere, or what you're really good at based on the gifts and the people that the Lord has given you? And so that's what branding is all about. We've got some great resources on our blog about that. Daniel Ross has talked about that in his church, and he put together an ebook for us, but he talks about them being the forgiveness place, and in contrast to a well-known church in the area who's not known for forgiveness. But what I would advise you to do is perform a SWOT analysis, and that's looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that's a very businessy term, but it's a great way to evaluate where your church is at right now. And that helps you form your church's brand. So the why is to apply the Great Commission in this time and place. Your brand tells how you're doing that. All right, so that's the why. The how is goals. Goals are super important for your church because it helps you focus. So they're clearly and publicly stated practical application of your brand. And they should have defined beginning, defined end times. They should be measurable so that they have these results to help you define success in your church. And success is not worldly success. Success is just saying that you're accomplishing what you set out to do. And that promotes accountability for the whole church, for the church staff, for the members, to say, here's what we plan to do based on who we are right now. We've set out to do this, and we're working towards achieving these goals. And that can help energize your staff and your members. But it also helps provide direction for your communication. So we see this kind of like a curb, where your goals help you focus your attention on what you're trying to accomplish. And you're not trying to accomplish all things to all people. You're not trying to communicate under every single channel and share everything your church is doing in all the different ways that you can. But it helps you focus on what's most important, and that stems straight from your brand, goes to your goals, and really helps you keep that attention on what you're there to do. So that's the how. The who. Every good communication plan should clearly define the audience. And while this may seem real simple right off the bat, well, the audience are the church members. Like, of course. Well, it's a little bit more than that. So the audience is the recipient of your goal results. So if your goal is to launch a preschool in association with your church, well, your audience is not just the people in your congregation who are parents of preschoolers, but it's the people in your community who are looking for a preschool. You know, if your goal is to launch a mission trip this year, well, there are plenty of people in your community who are looking to connect with a group to serve others. And whether they are looking at a church or not, there's people who are willing to serve. And so your audience expands out of that. So what we recommend doing is establishing personas. Personas are fictional representations of your audience, and it really helps you narrow your attention, again, on who you're speaking, how to speak with them, how to communicate with them, where to communicate with them, where are they at online. And so as you go through this process of determining personas, you can collect data and you can create your lists of people to communicate with so that you can appropriately segment your audience for all the different communication efforts that you have. You should no longer be communicating everything to everybody, but you can narrow the focus to what is most relevant. And as we talk about relevance, we're trying not to waste people's attention. People only have so many hours of the day and so much capacity to receive all of these messages that are being sent out to them. So you want to respect their attention, and by segmenting your audience, by focusing the right message, contextualizing your message for those people, you can honor their attention and really hit home with what's most relevant for them. Okay, so that's the who. Next up is the what, is messaging. So this stems from each of those other ones. So we recommend putting together some message maps. And that is a way to connect between the goals and your audience and say, when you're speaking to this group, here are the key messages that you want to get across. They all point back to your goals. And of course, the goals flow from your brand. So message maps are commonly used in communications where you focus your attention around these key messages. And you'll see PR people do that all the time. Sometimes to skirt around issues that they don't want to talk about, they always bring the message back to what they do want to talk about. And for the church, that's super important. We always want to bring the message back to Christ and what he is doing at this time and this place. Context mapping is similar, but it's planning content for your audience for every step along their journey. And we talked about that before a little bit with that content framework. But as they are getting closer and more connected with your church, providing different content that aligns with what they're intending to do, and it aligns with your goals. And so what you share with somebody the first time they visit your congregation is going to be different than what you share with them after they've become members or after they have brought a friend to join or to visit at church. So each step along the way, you'll have a different message that applies directly to them. And again, that goes back to the relevance, that goes back to the attention. So that's the what, your messaging. Lastly, the where, and that's your channels. And so as you map out your communication plan, define where you're going to be. I already spent a lot of time talking about this. This is the framework that we talked about with Outposts and Media Empire, home base. Outposts being your social media channels and your search, where those two-way communications happen. Your Media Empire being that one-way, long format content, where you can provide some real meat of value to your audience. And then your home base being your church website, where people convert, where they go to the next step. So that is your channel. So as we review the entire communication plan, and I'm going a little quickly because I know we're short on time now, but every good communication will define each one of these. And as you know, it all flows right from the top all the way down. And each one provides more context and more relevance to your audience as you go. So the why, getting your brand right, showing the Great Commission at this time and place. The goals, what your time-sensitive goals are for applying that brand this year, this month, this quarter. Your audience, the recipients of your goals. Who are you trying to reach with those goals? Your messaging, what are you trying to reach that audience with? How are you showing them how you apply your brand to where they're at today? And lastly, the channels. Where are you having this conversation? Where are you communicating? So that's a broad overview, the 5 key ingredients of a communication plan. Like Seth mentioned before, I'm leading a church online communications comprehensive. It's a 14-week free course, all online. We have in live broadcasts every Thursday, but you can sign up and get the recordings as they go. And probably the easiest way to get started is to jump right into the content in our blog, concordiatechnology.org/blog. And each week we're posting the content for the week there. We've got everything ready to go for this coming Thursday, but you can go back and review the last 2 weeks. So we're only on week 3 of 14. It's a great way to get started, and we'll dig into all of these different details as we go. So I really encourage you to join us, and I thank you for joining us today for this digital conference. So Seth, back to you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Peter. There's one question that came in here. Any suggestions on phasing this type of work when you don't necessarily have a staff where you can kind of get going on this? You mentioned the comprehensive. How can somebody start to, I guess, step back and be more strategic? Any recommendations, suggestions for somebody in that?
You know, Evan stole my favorite line earlier today when he talked about how do you eat an elephant? Well, it's one bite at a time. And if you don't have a communication plan right now, every little bit that you add is going to be better than what you had. And so I would start at the top and just focus on your branding. And as you go through, everything else will be a little bit more clear. And then as you have time, jot it down, start to refine it as you go. It's an ongoing process. And once you're really good, you'll make this into an annual process. But if you're a lone person at the church focused on communications part-time, it is going to take some time. But once you start thinking strategically, everything will become a little bit more easier, a little bit more clear to you as you go. And again, each step along the way, you're better than you were before. So my real advice is just get started where you can and improve as you go.
Good. And I mean, again, to plug the comprehensive that you're building right now, I think that's a great place to start. And I think it's going to provide that kind of pathway forward for them. So connect in that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter.